A profound analysis of Korea by members of the media. Press Perspective.
A distinct perspective and a broader view. News Center.
A compelling discussion spotlighting domestic and international affairs within the frame.
Opening new vistas through a window of truth, connecting Korea and the world. Your pick, Arirang News.
It's April 2nd here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dan. We begin with the stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with impeachment ruling for the South Korean leader Yoon Suk-yeol. This Friday at 11 a.m., the Constitutional Court will announce its decision on whether to remove him from office permanently or reinstate him over his abrupt martial law order declared last December. Friday's proceedings will be broadcast live. And the security around the court will be tightened on the big day, with the police designating a 100-meter radius around the court as a no-go zone. The Trump administration's reciprocal tariffs will be announced at 4 p.m. on Wednesday Eastern Time, the White House says, adding that they will be effective immediately.
결연한 구국의 의지로 비상계엄을 선포하였습니다.
The ruling date has finally been set for President Yoon's impeachment trial, Friday at 11 a.m. The Constitutional Court will rule on the validity of the impeachment over Yoon's martial law declaration. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young lays out what to expect on the ruling day.
President Yoon's removal or return to power will take effect the moment his fate is stated aloud by the Constitutional Court bench on Friday. Set to be broadcast live at 11 a.m., the nation will be reading the lips of Justice Chung Yong-sik, who as the presiding judge on the case will deliver the decision by the 8-member bench. The ruling will come 111 days after the National Assembly's impeachment vote last December, following the president's martial law order. The bench's deliberation is the longest ever for a presidential case, as the ruling will be delivered 38 days after Yoon's final trial hearing in February. While sources say the justices have reached an understanding on the verdict and scheduled a meeting for Wednesday, most likely to discuss procedural matters, the bench is expected to sign off on their decision at the very last minute to maintain utmost confidentiality. In the case of former President Park Geun-hye in 2017, the justices arrived early in the morning of the ruling to confirm their decision. If the same procedure is followed, the lead justice for the case, Chung Yong-sik, will present his opinion first, followed by other justices in reverse order of their appointments to the court. Once they establish a consensus, the bench will conduct a final review of the written judgment, collect signatures and seal the ruling. When entering the courtroom to deliver their decision, the justices will take their seats in the order of seniority, with Acting Chief Justice Moon Young-bae at the centre to declare a start to the proceedings. Typically, if there has been a unanimous decision, the lead justice explains the rationale for the ruling first, followed by the main decision. If there are dissenting or various concurring opinions, the main decision is usually read first, followed by explanations from individual justices representing differing views. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo's impeachment trial was also concluded with the bench first declaring the case dismissed before revealing various opinions. However, as the order of delivery is at the court's discretion, the style of the proceedings could vary. If the court upholds the impeachment, with the consent of at least 6 justices, President Yoon will be removed from office. If the case is dismissed or rejected on procedural grounds by 3 or more members of the bench, he will return to his duties. While previous presidents did not attend their ruling session, President Yoon may choose to show up in the courtroom, as he's done for his hearings throughout the trial. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
And the police are taking extra security precautions to reduce potential friction and violence on the ruling day. Some areas around the court will be cordoned off, while schools near the court will be shut down. Our Choi Soo-hyung reports.
Following the impeachment ruling for President Yoon, set for Friday, April 4th, the police have sealed off a 100-meter radius around the Constitutional Court. As of 1 p.m. Tuesday, police banned all gatherings and traffic within a 100-meter radius of the Constitutional Court. Police vehicles formed barricades on nearby roads, including in front of the court and at the Taedong Elementary School intersection. Pedestrian paths have been blocked, restricting public access, and vehicle traffic on Bukchonno outside the court has also been banned. For safety reasons, Anguk Station on line number 3 has closed all access except for exits 5 and 6. Seoul Metro has announced the station would be fully closed on Friday, the day of the ruling. Police have tightened security, closely monitoring nearby gatherings to prevent potential clashes. On the day of the ruling, the highest level emergency response from the police, Kapo Emergency, will be issued, allowing full deployment of police forces. Around 20,000 police personnel from across the country will be mobilized, with 14,000 deployed to Seoul. The level of personal protection for Constitutional Court judges will also be strengthened. Currently, the police are providing dedicated protection for all Constitutional Court judges, including protecting their homes. Meanwhile, on Friday, the day of the ruling, nearby palaces and schools will be closed. The Korea Heritage Service announced that Gyeongbokgung, Changdeokgung and Deoksugung palaces will be closed. The Seoul Metropolitan Office of Education stated that at least 13 schools near the court and the presidential residence in Yongsan will also be temporarily closed as a precaution. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
So we are now just 2 days away from the big day that will not only determine the fate of the South Korean leader, but which could also reshape the country's political landscape. We turn to a legal expert, Kim Ji-soo, in the meantime. Hello there, Ji-soo.
Morning.
Ji-soo, we are now counting down to Friday. How will the court and the 8 justices spend the next few days up until Friday?
So at this point, the court decision has already been made. The justices have reached an agreement behind the closed doors, but that doesn't mean the whole process is done. Over the next 2 days, the Constitutional Court is going to focus on the written opinion, which is also called the decision document. So that is where the justices explain how they reached the arrival of the ruling. And in a case of this magnitude, every word matters. Every legal citations, every sentences of reasoning, all of it needs to be precise, consistent, and ready to withstand public scrutiny. So I'm going to break it down day by day. So they are scheduled to meet again on April 2nd by the day of today at 10 a.m. to continue refining the language in the documents. And on April 3rd will likely be a day for internal checks and final sign-offs. And as for the last day of the on April 4th, no more deliberations are going to be held. They're going to go straight to announce the decision publicly.
And there were so many rumors and speculation over the court's composition, being 5-3 or 6-2. Now that the ruling day is confirmed, would you say the justices have, sorted things out and finally reached a unilateral agreement, or do we not know yet?
So let me just start by saying that we don't know for sure whether the vote has been split yet. The deliberations were held in absolute confidentiality, but I would say that 5-3 seems very unlikely since the Constitution has showed a very strong precedent cases that they're just going to wait or seek a more definite outcome rather than leaving room for any kind of contest. So there's the issue of Ma Eun-hyuk judge appointment here. So if he were to join, the result could be changed. So the fact that the court is scheduled a ruling, it means that they're moving forward with preparation, suggests that there may have been a unanimous or at least 6-2 agreement. And that's speculation, yes, but I think it's not baseless. And even on the day of the ruling, we'll be able to get some clues based on how the verdict is delivered. If the Chief Justice opens with a summary and saves the actual verdict for the last, that typically means the court was unanimous. And if the verdict comes first, followed by separate opinions, well, that usually signals a split of vote. And that's not a hard rule, so the court can deviate from that format, but it does give the public a kind of a hint to align how they align the justices were.
We'll be on the lookout for that. Now, I know you just ruled out the possibility of the composition being 5-3, but let's say that composition ends up being a 5-3, but there's nothing anyone can do about it, right? So what is done, correct?
Yes, exactly. The court's decision has what's called formal finality. It means the ruling is binding and irreversible. So the parties involved, including the president, the National Assembly, and the public itself, cannot no longer challenge it under any legal mechanism. So no re-litigation, no constitutional complaint, not even a motion to reconsider. So yes, once the ruling is delivered, that's it. The court will just close the book.
So everything will be wrapped up by tomorrow on Friday, in 2 days on Friday. And all eyes are on if President Yoon make himself a president in the courtroom on Friday. Ji-soo, do you think he will? Because he did make sure to be present for the hearings, right?
Exactly. So I think it's certainly possible, and I think the context matters here. So during the hearings, even while in detention, President Yoon showed it up in person 8 times. And that's a stark contrast to previous presidents who faced an impeachment, like Nominee or Park Geun-hye, who chose not to attend any of those hearings at all. Now, the President Yoon is no longer in custody. There's nothing preventing him from appearing in the court on the day of the ruling. And his legal team suggests that they're still reviewing the decision of appearing. But it's not just a legal moment, I think. It's a political one, a very public one. And for a president who's been vocal about his cases several times, I think his appearance might be come down to the earth right now.
Jisoo, before I let you go, last but not least, the ruling will be delivered live. Now, that's going to be live considering the gravity of the whole, situation and also the case.
Right. So the Constitutional Court announced that the verdict will be broadcasted live and the courtroom will be open to the public. And this isn't something new. So when President Park Geun-hye was impeached, her ruling was also aired live. And why are they doing this? Because the stakes are humongous here. This isn't just about a legal decision. It's about a constitutional moment. It affects the presidency, the people, and the nation's trust in its institutions. And I know that not every cases get this kind of treatment. For example, the court didn't allow live coverage for the recent ruling involving Prime Minister Han Duck-soo.
Right.
But when the issue is of national importance like this, the court has generally erred on the side of openness.
All right, Jisoo, thank you as always for joining us early in the morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
U.S. President Donald Trump's upcoming tariffs are a day away, and the reciprocal tariffs will go into effect as soon as he announces the details. Our Lee Soo-jin has the details.
U.S. President Donald Trump's pending tariffs will go into effect immediately after they are announced, according to a White House spokesperson on Tuesday local time.
My understanding is that the tariff announcement will come tomorrow. They will be effective immediately. He's with his trade and tariff team right now, perfecting it to make sure this is a perfect deal for the American people and the American worker.
The tariffs are set to be announced by Trump at a Rose Garden ceremony at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on April 2nd, which is 5 a.m. on the 3rd here in Korea. He has repeatedly touted April 2nd as Liberation Day as he believes that his policies will free American industries from what he calls unfair trade practices. And according to U.S. media outlets, including the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, the Trump administration is considering various tariff strategies. One is imposing a 20% flat tariff on all imports. Another is assigning each country a reciprocal tariff number that corresponds to tariffs and other trade barriers on U.S. products. And the U.S. Trade Representative is also considering a third option where levies, likely to be lower than the universal 20%, would be imposed on a wide range of imports from select countries. For South Korea, these tariffs are expected to add further pressure as they come amid a wave of other tariffs, such as the 25% auto tariff set to go into effect on April 2nd and collected the following day. And just last month, the Trump administration imposed sweeping 25% tariffs on aluminum and steel. But despite the country's leadership vacuum, the Korean government is holding various emergency meetings to come up with response measures. Acting President Han Duck-soo on Tuesday, along with the industry, finance, and foreign ministers, met with heads of Korea's top 4 conglomerates, Samsung Electronics, Hyundai Motor, SK, and LG, where Han pledged to continue high-level U.S. outreach and to work with the private sector to respond to the challenges posed by the tariffs. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
The nominee for U.S. Joint Chief of Staff Chairman John Cain criticized North Korea's nuclear and missile programs, while calling for trilateral security cooperation among Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
During a Senate confirmation hearing on Tuesday, top U.S. general nominee John Cain called North Korea's nuclear and missile programs an immediate security challenge. The retired Air Force Lieutenant General, who has been chosen by U.S. President Donald Trump to be the next chief of U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, raised the concerns in a written statement submitted in advance to the Senate Armed Services Committee. Cain said if confirmed, he would assess the U.S. military presence in South Korea and Japan and make recommendations to the Secretary of Defense and the U.S. President. The nominee also stressed that North Korea's nuclear, missile, and cyber capabilities continue to threaten not just the U.S., but its allies on a global scale. Cain also expressed support for trilateral security cooperation between the U.S., South Korea, and Japan. He vowed to continue advocating the use of the Trilateral Security Cooperation Framework as a blueprint for military cooperation if confirmed. The framework was signed by the defense chiefs of Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo last July, which was seen as a move to formalize their trilateral security cooperation. The top U.S. general nominee also raised concerns that North Korea's cooperation with Russia may provide an opportunity for Pyongyang to improve its missile capabilities. He says the regime had provided ballistic missiles to Russia that were used against Ukraine, marking the first time North Korean missile systems have been used in actual combat. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Over 2,700 people have been confirmed dead as of Tuesday due to the deadly earthquake that shook Myanmar last Friday. Despite the 72-hour golden time being over now, relief efforts are still in full swing. Our Peun-ji tells us more.
Homes are destroyed and lives are lost in Myanmar after the country was hit by its largest earthquake in more than a century. The death toll has already exceeded 2,700, despite the efforts of rescuers desperately searching for survivors. International organizations are rushing to help, as residents in hardest-hit regions are in urgent need of shelter and essential items such as clean water, food, and hygiene kits. A representative of the UN Refugee Agency in Myanmar, based in Yangon, said the latest earthquake is a crisis on top of a crisis, as the country already had more than 3 million people displaced from the ongoing armed conflict, even before the earthquake.
And this area, particular area of north and central and northwestern part of Myanmar, it was already the home of 1.6 million IDPs, internally displaced people. On the top of that, we do think that almost 50 million people have been affected by this earthquake, and among which 3.8 million, which is quite a devastating number, 3.8 million people are considered to be living in the area that was hardest hit by the earthquake. So the impact, you can imagine, is quite enormous.
The country director for Solidaritas International, a France-based NGO who's also in Yangon, said local responders are starting to get exhausted and that they're running out of resources. He highlighted that the situation is at a turning point, adding that efficient collaboration between local teams and international organizations is crucial in order to gather all available resources.
Mostly, we are going to support local responders when it comes to displacement sites for people that have been evacuating the city of Mandalay because of fear of building continuing to collapse and being affected. We know already that quite a lot of people have now been spending 3 nights out in the streets with no shelter, with no immediate protection. So that's
With hospitals, schools, and public infrastructure now destroyed, there are concerns not only with regard to basic needs, but also healthcare and the educational system. The vice president of the International Rescue Committee said teams have been sent to a town near the epicenter of the earthquake, where 80% of the buildings have been compromised, and explained that the impact of an earthquake can last years.
It's been heartening to see the response that's been mounted so far, but we know this is going to be an effort that's going to take not weeks but months, possibly years, to fully recover from a crisis like this.
As the devastated country struggles to cope with the aftermath of the powerful earthquake, local communities are still awaiting international aid and support. Peun-ji, Arirang News.
Consumer prices in South Korea in March saw an increase in the 2% range for the third consecutive month. According to inflation data from Statistics Korea, consumer prices in March increased by 2.1% year-on-year. Notably, marine products went up by 4.9% and processed foods went up by 3.6%. Recent consumer price data shows a steady rise in the low 2% range over the past 3 months, slightly higher than September to December last year, when inflation was in the 1% range. And South Koreans began heading to the polls for Wednesday's local by-elections. Voting kicked off at 6 a.m. and will close at 8 p.m. Up for grabs are 23 seats, including Busan's Superintendent of Education, the head of Seoul's Guro District Office, as well as mayors for Asan, Kimcheon in Gyeongsangbuk-do Province, and Geoje in Gyeongsangnam-do Province. According to the National Election Commission, early turnout on March 28th and 29th came to 7.94%. Pundits say the by-elections are unlikely to serve as a reliable barometer of voter sentiment ahead of the upcoming impeachment verdict for President Yoon.
Good morning, I'm Choi Ji-hee, and this is The World Now. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has visited Moscow, meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Foreign Affairs Minister Sergei Lavrov to discuss bilateral relations and international issues. During his three-day visit, Wang Yi stated on Tuesday local time that both nations are friends forever, never enemies, emphasizing the enduring friendship between China and Russia. President Putin underscored the high level of Russia-China relations, calling for the consistent enhancement of strategic cooperation. Wang also expressed China's readiness to play a constructive role in resolving the Ukraine conflict. It was also confirmed that Chinese President Xi Jinping would visit Moscow for the Victory Parade in May, commemorating the 80th anniversary of the Soviet Union's victory over Nazi Germany. Ukraine has announced it plans to work with the United States to develop a mutually acceptable minerals agreement, aiming to bolster economic ties and support Ukraine's reconstruction efforts. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha stated on Tuesday local time that Kyiv is working with the U.S. to refine a minerals deal that would see more American business involvement in Ukraine and contribute to the nation's security infrastructure. The latest U.S. proposal suggests that Ukraine allocate all profits from a fund controlling its resources to repay American wartime aid with interest. President Volodymyr Zelensky has expressed caution, emphasizing the need for a thorough review before proceeding. Meanwhile, Germany's foreign minister said during a visit to Kyiv on Tuesday that any minerals agreement between Ukraine and the U.S. must comply with European Union legislation. In the United States, the Department of Health and Human Services initiated significant layoffs on Tuesday local time, affecting approximately 10,000 employees. This affected workers across various agencies, including the Food and Drug Administration, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and the National Institutes of Health. The action is part of a broader restructuring plan led by Health Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr., aiming to consolidate 28 divisions into 15 to potentially save taxpayers $1.3 billion annually. Despite concerns about the nation's capacity to manage health emergencies, Kennedy said the reorganization will enhance efficiency within the department. Finally, on Tuesday local time, the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History in the U.S. unveiled the Winston Red Diamond, a 2.33-carat gem recognized as one of the world's largest fancy red diamonds. Donated by Ronald Winston, son of renowned jeweler Harry Winston, the rare diamond is now on public display in the museum's Harry Winston Gallery, alongside 40 other colorful diamonds. Fancy red diamonds are exceptionally rare, with researchers estimating their occurrence is fewer than 1 in 25 million diamonds. The deep crimson hue results from unique alterations in its crystal structure under extreme pressure and temperature conditions.
The dry weather continues across much of the country, with fire danger still high due to gusty winds. But today we have some much-needed spring rain on the way. Rain will start around midday in the capital area, spreading to the rest of the country, possibly reaching Gyeongsang-do provinces tonight. But the amount won't be that much, just about 5 to 10 millimeters, so fire safety is still key. The western regions may feel stuffy today as ultrafine dust levels remain high, so please keep a face mask handy. Skies started off clear but turned cloudy as the day goes on. Afternoon highs will be slightly lower today, topping out at 15 degrees in the capital, Daejeon, Daegu at 18 degrees Celsius. Today's rain may linger in Gangwon-do's eastern region until tomorrow morning, and this Saturday marks Arbor Day, and another round of nationwide rain is in the forecast. So keep that in mind for any outdoor plans. Meanwhile, do expect big temperature swings between morning and afternoon, and do dress accordingly.
That is all we have for our morning edition of Arirang News. We'll be back with more stories making the headlines at 5 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.
How to survive in Korea. One room. So, you're surviving in Korea if you've signed a contract for a one room. Obviously, you're a pro. But the real deal begins now. Step 1. Housewarming. No need to buy toilet paper, diffusers or hand soap. You'll get them soon enough as housewarming gifts. And some are bound to pile up. There's nothing better to serve your guests than milpaeyu nabe. If you have Korean friends coming over, don't forget the extra garlic. Step 2. Garbage disposal. With great power comes great responsibility. You've had a good time, so let's get to work. It might be tempting to sweep everything into a trash can, but you have to separate your garbage. Not bothered? Beware that negligence is punished with a fine or public humiliation. Step 3. Drying rack. You're excited to live alone in Korea, but the fate of these items, hanger, storage, or a hanger. Go get fresh coffee outside. Jogging doesn't cost anything, and nothing beats instant rice. But keep one item around so that you don't get too lonely. Step 4. Pros of living alone. No mum. Cons of living alone. No mum. A new towel doesn't magically appear. You have to do the laundry regularly. If anyone gives a towel as a souvenir, take it. Get rid of mold immediately. Don't be lazy with the vacuum cleaner. Housework is an endless affair. Overwhelmed? Give your mum a call and thank her for everything she's done. Did you survive in your one room? Wait, you have an unwanted visitor. Call someone you fancy. Could be the right person for the job.
The single letter that has captivated the world. K. We answered that question with a K-culture journalist on The Culture Wave. What's the next K on your radar? Get ready to ride the wave of K-culture's latest trends.
bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Wednesday, April 2nd here in Seoul. I'm Song Yujin, and great to have you with us on News Generation. Joining us today is Park Hyun.
Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday, and Grace Park.
Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of those in their 20s and 30s. As usual, we're going to begin with our keyword news. Our keyword for today is ChatGPT. Now, over the past few days, your feed may have been flooded with whimsical images in the style of Japanese animation studios, like the ones you're seeing on the screen right now. These dreamy Studio Ghibli-style illustrations were generated using ChatGPT's newest image generation tool, part of the latest GPT-4o update. According to OpenAI, this model has been trained on a wide range of visual styles and is capable of creating high-quality still images and even short videos inspired by popular animation aesthetics such as Ghibli, Disney, Pixar, and The Simpsons, to name a few. Now, with this update going viral, ChatGPT reportedly reached a new milestone in Korea, hitting over 1.2 million daily users. So Grace, have you also tried making these fun images yourself?
I actually did over the weekend. So me and a couple of my friends, we decided to take a picture and test it out. So yeah, we sent the picture into ChatGPT, asked it to turn it into the Studio Ghibli style that's been trending these days. And yeah, I actually liked it. It was whimsical, like you mentioned, and it was really accurate too, because we were on this little staircase. We had a sign behind us, and it actually recreated the exact sign, the exact stairway, like it even recreated the bracelet on my wrist. Like, it was really accurate. So yeah, it was both amazing and frightening at the same time how good AI is getting at making content like this, since it was always said that the one thing AI couldn't do was be creative, at least to the extent of human beings.
Right, but we're now seeing artificial intelligence getting more creative, which is stunning and also, as you mentioned, fearful at the same time. So once again, while these images are visually very stunning and fun to share, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman recently commented that the demand for these AI-generated images has been so high, it is melting GPUs, highlighting how much computing power artificial intelligence requires. And at the same time, concerns around copyright and intellectual property are once again bubbling to the surface. So, Kyun, could you tell us what exactly are these concerns?
Before I talk about the concerns, Sam Altman wrote on his X post that it's super fun seeing people love images on ChatGPT.
And I also want to mention that his profile picture is
exactly.
Ghibli-style image of himself.
He Ghiblified his profile picture as well, showing how much, how much of a hype this is becoming all over the world. However, on the flip side, the quick spread has gone beyond the point where the original creator can not just sue one person who has violated copyright issues, but it's become millions and millions of users all over the world, so who can also be held accountable. And I think it's unfortunately seeing that technology has evolved faster than the law. But fortunately, work is underway on new legislation to try and balance technological innovation with protecting artists' creative identities. However, as of now, copyright law does not protect styles like the Studio Ghibli-style illustrations that we've seen on the screen that everyone is using right now.
Right, so hopefully legislations and protection measures can keep up with the speed of technology.
Yep.
All right, and that was our keyword news for this Wednesday. So we're now going to move on to our main discussion of the day. Wednesday means it's time to focus on the latest lifestyle trends shaping the younger generation. Take a look at the screen to find out more. In Korea, office culture has long been rooted in hierarchy, where seniority often outweighed performance. Climbing the corporate ladder meant staying put and waiting your turn. But these days, more Korean companies are switching gears and adopting performance-based promotions and pay raises. So, what's driving this shift? Right, so starting off our show today, Kyun, could you first walk us through some examples of companies that are already moving toward this merit-based system in Korea when determining an employee's promotion or pay raise?
Sure thing. South Korea's internet conglomerate and biggest search engine provider, Naver, has announced plans to introduce a level-based system, or simply performance-based system. So this system, known as a level system, evaluates employee performance regularly, regardless of years of experience and working at the company, and assigns levels that are linked to future compensation. Naver became one of the few big companies to scrap traditional ranks such as assistant manager and manager based on seniority and experience, categorizing employees instead just as either leaders or team members. From the company's perspective, the primary reason for implementing the level system is motivation with the employees. And the idea is that even employees with fewer years of experience can achieve higher levels and receive greater rewards, which in turn is expected to lead to higher productivity within the company.
But once again, this is fairly a new office culture here in Korea when compared to other countries like the United States. So, Grace, could you please explain in detail how traditional office culture in Korea has functioned until now?
Sure. Traditional office culture in Korea is typically hierarchical, with a strong focus on respecting authority and seniority. This culture also values teamwork, harmony among employees, and collective success, rather than one person being the one that outshines everyone else. There's also the aspect of nunchi, which can be described as the ability to read social cues and in between the lines. And this is actually big in all aspects of Korean culture and also in navigating workplace dynamics. Now, with the implementation of the merit-based system, employees are expected to perform better, to be promoted, or to get a raise, which is different from the traditionally teamwork-focused work culture that many Korean employees are used to. So that might bring on a lot of change in the overall working culture here. A few Korean companies like Coupang, Lotte On, and Kakao are already operating on this system, much like the majority of big tech firms in the US like Google, Amazon, or Apple, just to name a few.
So we're also seeing more companies in Korea adopting this new system.
Right.
But once again, change is never easy, including in the workplace. So I also want to ask your panelists, how are younger employees responding to this shift? What could be some potential benefits and downsides of this new system?
So according to a survey conducted by a recruitment platform, around 18,000 working Korean Gen Zs were asked about the question what they think about performance or merit-based systems being implemented at a company. Let's take a look at the screen to find out more. 72% of the respondents gave a positive answer, while 28% were against this idea. And among those in favor, 43% said they expect the introduction of the level system to lead to fair performance-based evaluations. Another 41% cited rapid promotion regardless of seniority, followed by the creation of a more horizontal organizational culture at 11%, and a greater career visibility at 5%. Furthermore, Korea has a long history of having a culture that emphasizes age and seniority, like Grace mentioned, where younger or less experienced employees often find it difficult to speak up in front of their seniors, and therefore communication can be very slow and rigid, illustrating a top-down organizational, conventional, traditional structure. And the introduction of this performance-based system could help overcome these obstacles and limitations and create an open environment for, I guess, younger, talented, hard-working employees to be rewarded fairly just based purely on their performance rather than how long they've actually worked at a single company.
So some people might think this system is more fair.
In some aspects.
In some
aspects.
Right, which could be the reason why more than a majority of the respondents of the poll that Kyun just mentioned were for introducing this performance-based system. But we're now going to focus on breaking down what the 28% of this poll thinks. So Grace, could you help us break down their main arguments?
Yeah, we can see that those who were against this merit-based model cited intensifying internal competition, the overemphasis on short-term achievements, unclear evaluation criteria for employees, and the undermining of creativity and cooperation as the reasons behind their opinion. And some are concerned that too much competition at the workplace can negatively impact morale among employees that aren't really built for such intense pressure. And it's also worth mentioning that aside from the tangible performance measures, there are other more mundane and administrative tasks that are just as important to keep a company running than performance performance alone. In fact, amid such concerns, Naver's labor union had previously called for ways to strengthen the capabilities of their employees through training measures rather than enforcing this new merit-based system. Also, South Korean airline Air Premia, which was one of the first companies to consider this system, actually ended up foregoing it because it determined that the evaluation criteria for employees were not clear.
Right, and I think this is especially true because performance, if you're trying to evaluate it, it's sometimes really hard to exactly measure who was better in terms of performance.
Right.
And also, even if we could, it could really lead to a more competitive workforce. And already we're struggling with a very competitive atmosphere here in South Korea. So we've now taken a look at both sides, what both sides are arguing. We also asked what our viewers think by running a poll on our Arirang News YouTube channel. And the question was, how should companies approach employment pay? And 76% chose performance-based pay, while 24% chose experience-based pay. So this kind of aligns with the data that Ki-hoon mentioned earlier. Now, to dive deeper into this trend, we're going to invite an HR specialist to our talks after the break. Stay with us.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search our channel Arirang News. Click Community and leave a comment down below. Make a new type of news with us.
And joining us today is Sarah Park, Head of Korea HR at GP, a global job search and recruitment platform. Welcome back to the show, Sarah.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So, Sarah, could you first break down how this performance-based evaluation systems usually work in practice? How do companies that use this approach actually measure and assess employee performance?
Sure. In practice, performance-based evaluation systems revolve around predefined objectives and measurable KPIs, which are key performance indicators. It's not just about effort or loyalty, which traditionally held weight in Korean companies, but about tangible outcomes. Companies set quarterly or annually goals for individuals or teams and track progress through data and conduct regular interviews. Globally, this often includes 360-degree feedback, while in Korea, we're seeing a shift towards more transparent, data-driven reviews. Well, this is still tempered through hierarchy and that Korean-style team harmony considerations. The key challenge is really balancing hard metrics with qualitative factors and collaboration and innovation.
Sarah, what are some potential upsides and drawbacks of this kind of system for both employees and employers? It would be great to hear your thoughts from both perspectives, if possible.
Of course. From the employee side, the upside is clarity. You know what's expected, and high performers are more likely to be rewarded. It can be very motivating, especially for younger professionals who value fairness and meritocracy. But the downside is that it can foster unhealthy competition or burnout, especially in cultures like Korea's, where group harmony and face saving are really important. For employers, it can boost productivity and accountability, which is obviously very good. But if it's implemented too rigidly, it can really backfire. Employees might focus on what's measured and ignore what's not, like creativity, long-term thinking, which are obviously essential for all companies. The real art lies in designing a system that drives performance and also sustains morale and culture.
Thank you, Sarah. Do you think this model will catch on more broadly across different industries going beyond just the tech world?
Absolutely, but with nuance. Globally, performance-based systems are already the norm in tech, finance, and sales-driven sectors. In Korea, there's growing momentum, obviously amongst younger, more globally minded companies and startups. Even large, more robust conglomerates are experimenting, albeit more cautiously, like what Air Premia did. But one size does not fit all. Industries like education, healthcare, or creative fields need hybrid models, ones that recognize both output and process. And Korea's work culture is evolving fast, especially post-pandemic. So I think we'll see more of a tailored, culturally sensitive approaches to performance evaluation, one that blend that flow and harmony with emotional intelligence that Korean teams really value.
All right, Sarah Park, Head of Korea HR at GP. Thank you so much for your insights today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, ending off our discussion today, this merit-based evaluation system is slowly becoming the new norm, not only in other parts of the world, but here in Korea. And while some people are feeling positive about it, there are also some concerns, as we talked about it on the top of our show. So, how do you think companies and both workers can better prepare and embrace for this change?
So competition can be good and useful when utilized in a controlled manner.
Right.
Companies and workers are all stakeholders, therefore need to be respected and listened to while being responsible for their actions at the same time. So when a new policy is implemented, like a change in performance-based from the traditional experience-based system, I think the majority of the stakeholders need to approve it first, then come up with a clear and fair evaluation standards and measures, along with quick response to both internal and external changes, and finally backed with sufficient research data and success examples from other companies for it to be a very successful organizational change.
Right.
And like you said, change does take a long time, but if we're heading in the right direction, these few adjustments is required. But I think it may have worked in the tech industry, but it doesn't really apply to every single industry right now. So
Right.
I think slow actions need to be taken for it to be like a long-term success.
So going through trial and error and also being responsive to feedback from both sides. What do you think, Grace?
Yeah, I feel like as a society, there should always be like a safety net for people who are falling behind. And companies that are implementing this merit-based system should also have backup measures to support their employees that aren't as good as competitors as others, because working in an organization is not like a solo sport at the Olympics. While a certain level of competition is healthy, like Yoon mentioned, in this capitalist world we live in, I believe that corporations who foster teamwork and create a sense of shared purpose among its employees can ultimately achieve more in the long term.
Right, because although individual performance does matter, at the end of the day, we're all under one roof. And that's all we have for today, but Newsden will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. Special thanks to Park Yoon.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. And Grace Park.
Thank you.
Thank you. And to our viewers, thank you for staying with us, and we'll see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.
학교 다니면서